Hello, my name's Melissa Crook, and I'm here with you today on the Together We Feel Women's panel. I'm flying solo today, and you'll see why. And I'm flying solo, but I'm really not, because I'm going to be sharing the voices of so many Black women with you today, and then inviting you to go into the show notes and check out the links of all of the different people you can listen to and learn to that have shared their stories and resources on our platform here at the Embracing Layers Network, as well as those who've been a part of the larger movement of Juneteenth today. We're going to talk about the story of Juneteenth, the women behind the movement, ways you can participate. This is an opportunity for those of you who haven't taken it yet or haven't been given easy access to links. But this is a chance to bring out your curiosity and see why this holiday is so important to the U.S. and so important to celebrate all of us together. This is not just about, that's not the right way to say it. This is not only about the freedom of slaves in our country and honoring the day where it finally took place more than 2 years after it was declared to be law in the U.S. It took that long to reach the people in Galveston, Texas. And there was some intention behind that by white people and slave owners and those in positions of power that didn't want this to go away economically. And there's a whole history about that. Go visit the 1619 Project. It's linked. It's going to give you the whole actual history. And it really bothers me. There's been so much polarization around this conversation because these things are part of our history. And just because it involves recognizing horrible things that many of our ancestors were part of doesn't mean it's not part of the history. It's all part of the history. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to unlearn lack of truths that we have been told out of fear, out of lack of a full understanding and education of all the things that happened. We have a chance to learn and grow and be healthier and stronger together. And so in this time in the United States where we are living among so much elimination of history, take this opportunity to actually embrace and learn and realize the impact that this had on our country, the impact it's still having today, and what you can do to be part of it being healthier and stronger moving forward. What we can do, we can never right the wrongs, but we can make sure we don't continue to make the same tragic mistakes, the same tragic biases, the same tragic racism that has existed over time. So take this opportunity this week to learn about what this means for all of our freedom, to embrace the opportunity to celebrate and understand why this is for so many people in this country. They embrace this as their day of independence, as much of or more so than the 4th of July, because for many of these people for anybody that was enslaved, they were not free on Independence Day, the 4th of July. So Juneteenth represents that for those that were enslaved, the Black people across this country that built the country was built on their backs. So take this opportunity to learn. There's so much I've learned. There's so much I didn't know. I literally had barely heard about Juneteenth until I lived in Texas from 2019 to 2023. And when I got to Texas, it was a state holiday. And it did not become a federal holiday until President Biden declared it so in 2021. So I started learning about it and realizing all the pieces. I'd heard of it, but didn't really understand it. And it was such a great opportunity to learn. If you live in West Texas, I lived in Lubbock for 4 years. If you're in Lubbock, take an opportunity to visit the East Lubbock Art House. Their founder and executive director, Daniel Demetria East, she's been a guest here with me on the podcast. She's appeared on some Instagram lives. If you go to season 1, you can find her episode, and it's also going to be linked in today's show notes. Check out all that she's doing in Lubbock to be part of knowing the history, including Juneteenth, but history period. And also today, what resources are available for Black and Brown children in the community. And she opens it to everyone. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to unite and be part of something collective and hopeful and accountable. So this is something I'm very passionate about. I'm going to share, there's many articles shared in the resources part of the show notes today. I also in 2024 did a radio show on our Embracing Layers radio show that we had on internet radio on 360 Talk Radio Network for Women that year. I did a history of Juneteenth episode on there. That will be linked. You can get it in our Substack archives. You do need to be a paid subscriber to have access to it. It's $5 a month. You get access to all of our archived and anything older than 3 months, podcast episodes, panel shows, lives, book clubs, all of our whole radio show archive, newsletters, anything like that you get access to as a paid subscriber. And that is included in that. That's linked with all of its resources. And some resources I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to read from some things. Those will be linked as well. And then I'm going to link the incredible Black women that we've gotten to hear from. We are in our 10th season of the Feel podcast as part of our network here right now. We're having our 5-year anniversary celebration on July 14th, but the women from the Black community and a couple of men too, who have shared and been part of this experience with us, their shows are going to be linked in our show notes today. Take the opportunity to go back and listen and learn and share their resources and see and learn more about their contributions. And if you haven't done that already, do it again. But there's also going to be but this is an opportunity to learn. This is an opportunity to grow. There are events going on in most of our communities this week celebrating Juneteenth. Take the opportunity to attend one. Or there might be walks. We're going to share some walks here in a minute that are happening in some parts of the country. It's an opportunity, like I said, to learn. So instead, any fear or judgment you have, replace that with curiosity. If you don't understand this holiday, you don't understand why it exists, this is your opportunity to learn about that and maybe unlearn some things you've heard about that. I want to read from the National Women's History Alliance organization. They've got a Juneteenth article in here. It gives a little history of it. Juneteenth it's the 15th today that I'm doing this live. This will be available on our YouTube channel hereafter. I'm going to share links and promote it on our social media as well. Juneteenth is actually this Friday, June 19th. Many of you will have the day off. Don't just use it as a 3-day weekend holiday to get away to your favorite vacation spot. Take the opportunity to learn and really understand why it's so important that we have this day. So from this article, on June 17th, 2021, President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, which officially made Juneteenth a federal holiday. Juneteenth is observed on June 19th to commemorate the day in 1865 when the last enslaved African Americans in Texas were informed of their freedom, marking a pivotal moment in American history. The National Women's History Alliance honors Juneteenth by recognizing the resilience, achievements, and contributions of African American women who have played crucial roles in the fight for freedom and equality. Through educational initiatives, community events, and dedicated resources, NWHA highlights the significance of Juneteenth in the broader context of American history and reaffirms our commitment and promoting understanding, justice, and equity for all. Opal Lee, affectionately known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, has dedicated her life to advocating for the recognition of Juneteenth as a national holiday. Born in Marshall, Texas in 1926, Lee began her activism in the civil rights movement and has continued her efforts to educate and commemorate African American history. Her determination and perseverance led to Juneteenth being declared a federal holiday in 2021. Opal Lee's tireless work ensures that the legacy of freedom and equality are celebrated on Juneteenth and will be remembered and honored for generations to come. This woman was walking at 89 years old. It's the walks that happen now across the country to continue to honor the work she did to bring Juneteenth into being coincide closely with her 100th birthday this year. And so there is a whole website that will be listed on our show notes called Join the Opals Walk 2026. The Opals Walk campaign started as an initiative which aimed at gaining attention for Juneteenth to be made a national holiday. With the help of thousands of supporters across the country, Dr. Opal Lee, with the help of her granddaughter, Dion Sims, was able to make that dream a reality. Opal's Walk is now an annual event graced by thousands of people, and this year will be no exception. With 10 simultaneous in-person walks across the country and the virtual walk program, you can celebrate freedom wherever you are. Join us to walk on June 19th, 2026. And then there's a register here link that's also going to be shared on our site. And on that link, it says it's Dr. Opal Lee's 100th birthday, and you're invited. The 2026 Opal's Walk for Freedom series in honor of Ms. Opal's milestone birthday and America's 250th anniversary offers unity-focused experiences that highlight civic pride, historical awareness, and cross-cultural celebration. This Juneteenth, Ms. Opal and Dion invite everyone across the country to walk 2.5 miles with them in person or virtually, because freedom is a shared value worth celebrating. These are happening, and the links to sign up for them are happening personally in Cincinnati, Ohio, Evanston, Illinois, Fort Worth, Texas, Grants Pass, Oregon, Honolulu, Hawaii, Los Angeles, California, Washington, D.C., and then there's the virtual walk. And so there's many ways to sign up for this and be part of this. And so for me personally, I'm in Fresno, California, not quite close enough to LA to get there for the day to do the walk. So I can sign up for the virtual walk. So registration is open now. You can still sign up for it this week. It's not too late to pick one of those spots. And it's a part of being a part of an opportunity to be part of something collective, unifying, bigger than us all, but important for us all to be connected to. Opal Lee is quoted when it comes to talking about this walks as saying, "When I began walking, it was to remind people that freedom was delayed because it took so long to get word to Texas, but never denied," Lee said. "Walking together reminds us that justice requires action." Opal's Walk for Freedom is a national act of remembrance and responsibility, said Dion Sims, founder and CEO of Unity Unlimited. Walking together, and also her granddaughter, walking together reinforces our shared commitment to justice and unity. Registration is open at opalswalk.com. This is linked in the show notes. You just got to go to the show notes of this and grab it. And then Unity Unlimited, where Dion is the CEO, is a nonprofit organization that helps communities overcome racial, cultural, and economic division. The programs they produce support their missions of human dignity through education, resources, and opportunities, including initiatives such as Juneteenth Strong, a month-long event series celebrating freedom with their brand ambassador, the grandmother of Juneteenth, Dr. Opal Lee. So that I'm going to link that as well. Unity Unlimited will also be linked in our show notes. So I wanted to share those opportunities you can take right now to be part of this and learn more and be part of this collective celebration, honoring, learning, all of those things. So check that out. I think it's something really, it's a great, if this is new to you, this is a great opportunity as an entry point. If it's not new to you and you know about it, it's a great opportunity to get together with others, whether it's in person and virtually, and honor this day and its history and this incredible woman who was such a force and so committed to making this happen. And if you ever think, you're too old for something, no. As long as you're walking and breathing on this earth, there are possibilities and opportunities for you to be engaged with and make happen the things that you are passionate about. So such an important piece there. All right. I want to read one other article about Opal that's on oprahdaily.com, and that will be linked also. The grandmother of Juneteenth knows exactly how change happens. At 89, Opal Lee started marching across America to make Freedom Day a federal holiday. It's known as Freedom Day, Emancipation Day. These are all names that go with Juneteenth. Now she's sharing what the journey taught her about courage, curiosity, and keeping the faith. When you strip the story down to its bones, the earliest Juneteenths in Texas were acts of memory and hope. People gathered to say that at the end of slavery was worth more than a sentence in a book. It was worth a full day off the fields. It was worth a plate loaded with barbecue and a cup stained red. It was worth saving up. And there's a link to a cup stained red that you can learn more about what that means in this article. It was worth saving up to buy land and teaching a child like me, Oprah referring to herself, to say the date out and know why it mattered. That is how the holiday began, and that is why it endured through so many years when the rest of the country barely noticed. It's also why I took up the mantle to see our Freedom Day celebrated widely. Actually, I got that incorrect. That was from Opal, not Oprah. Growing up in East Texas, we celebrated Juneteenth every year, and I assumed the rest of the country did too. The holiday has been a big deal in my home state since the beginning, when Union Major General Gordon Granger, along with 7,000 Black troops, rode into Galveston and nailed General Order No. 3 to the door of Reedy Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. The issue announced that all enslaved people were free and stood in what the order called absolute equality with former enslavers. Whew, can you imagine the 250,000 enslaved people in the area who eventually heard that good news must have rejoiced. They gained so much that day. The ability to name themselves and have children who weren't going to be taken away from them, to dress themselves the way they saw fit, to own property. That announcement is a new rhythm for their lives. So of course they celebrated. Learning all this as a young child was especially impactful for me, since Galveston was only a few hours south of my hometown of Marshall. And mind you, this happened only 61 years prior to my own birth. Think about that for a minute. It's just not that far away. And there's still so much happening. And this is why I'm not reading from the article at this moment. I want to just take a moment to comment the importance of learning this, the importance of what Opal Lee is sharing, Dr. Opal Lee is sharing in this article, why it's important to recognize and celebrate this, what this meant for the Black people that were enslaved and the Black people today whose ancestors were enslaved, and for all of us. I mean, Fannie Lou Hamer says it best, none of us are free until we're all free. And I did not get that quote exactly right. But There's so much truth to that. So, okay, I'm back to the article now. Imagine the weight carried by those who were enslaved in Galveston, learning that their freedom had been signed into law, but denied in practice. That's why Juneteenth is so important. It's not just about celebration, it's about truth. It's about honoring those who were enslaved and recognizing the resilience it took to carry on. It's about teaching the full story of this country, not just the convenient parts. So, why was this moment, which tells the real story of freedom in America, still not being recognized nationally, even in the 21st century? That question became a burden I couldn't shake. I knew Juneteenth needed to be more than a local or regional observance. I believed it should be something children all across the nation could see on a calendar and learn about it in schools. So I made a decision. At 89 years old, I laced up my walking shoes. When we finished up our Juneteenth celebrations in 2016, I gave my granddaughter, Dion Sims, and other family members the shock of their lives. I got it in my head that if a little old lady in tennis shoes walked from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C., to ask President Obama to make Juneteenth a national holiday, somebody just might take notice. Of course, there was some pushback. Dion was especially concerned. You do know it's 1,400 miles to DC with 2.5 miles a day. Obama will be gone by the time you arrive. I ultimately would not walk the whole 1,400 miles from Fort Worth to Washington, D.C. in one stretch. My knees wouldn't have allowed that anyway. But I did walk 2.5 miles in many cities across the country. 1 mile for every year that freedom was delayed for those enslaved in Texas. Hence why the walks today are 2.5 miles for the 2.5 years that was delayed. There I was walking 2.5 miles over and over again in city after city, just to remind people that justice shouldn't be late and history shouldn't be hidden. We also launched a petition to go along with the walk, an initial goal of 100,000 signatures. Surprisingly to some, petitions have always been one of the simplest yet strongest tools for people to be heard. Folks might not have money or a position, but they can put their name down to say, this matters to me. And there is power in numbers. In every city I walked in, folks came out to greet me. Some even walked beside me. So many of my sorority sisters of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated came out to walk with me in different places. It was such a joy to see so many people join me on this journey. And it made me feel good that they understood the significance of my effort and were willing to put in their own. Others just waved signs or handed me water bottles. That was great too. So many people along the campaign were so grateful. You would have thought I had wings or something, the way people from every walk of life smiled and laughed with me along the way. I met children who told me they'd never heard of Juneteenth before, but now they'd never forget it. I met elders who wept, grateful to see our history finally getting the light it deserved. There were people of all backgrounds, Black, white, Latino, Asian, who said, I didn't know before, but I want to know now. It was a bit disappointing that we didn't get a chance to make it to the White House in 2016. All our marketing and advocacy were drowned out by the contentious election year. And of course, the incoming administration wasn't exactly open to a conversation about the importance of Juneteenth. Thankfully, we still got it done in the end. Even after I stopped walking, I never stopped pressing the issue. I kept the goal in mind and conversations about Juneteenth as elevated as possible. By 2019, we received a call from Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign who wanted to acknowledge me for Juneteenth. That's when I knew it was time to walk again. This time, however, we put our petition on change.org and were able to get about 5,000 more signatures there. But it wasn't until George Floyd was murdered by a police officer in 2020 and people were looking for ways to voice their support for the African American community that things took off. It was another election year, and we were closely watching the Democratic debates. As folks learned about Floyd and the earlier murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, they took to the streets. It seemed like so many people were looking for a way to channel their frustration with the injustices they were seeing, and in doing so, many of them found our petition. We went from 5,000 to 80,000 names overnight. We'd almost reached our goal and we're so happy. But Dion wanted to press it a bit more. Grandier, I think we should add some zeros to our goal, she said. Well, that was just fine with me. We moved our goal to 1 million names, and by Juneteenth of that year, we were almost there. That's when a couple of high-profile celebrities, including Pharrell Williams and Usher, got involved. Another celeb in particular said, I'm going to help you get to 1 million. And that's exactly what he did. 1.5 million people signed their name to a petition to make Juneteenth the 11th federal holiday. One reason we wanted Juneteenth to be a holiday was that it recognized the way our past drives our present. In 2020, people were marching for the same hope of freedom and justice that was delivered to the formerly enslaved Africans in Galveston just 150 years prior. In fact, I'm now pushing the idea that we should celebrate Juneteenth from the 19th of June all the way to the 4th of July. Juneteenth must stand tall beside the 4th, not as a replacement, but as a reckoning, a completion of the freedom story. I think that's brilliant. And I think many people are starting to do that unofficially. But boy, what a statement that would make if it was a national recognition from June 19th through July 4th for collective whole freedom. Whenever I say this to people, especially groups who have come to hear me speak, it's as if a ripple goes through the room. People get it. They recognize the connection between the two holidays and see the possibilities that can come when we acknowledge our shared history. And I know it's controversial to say, but I'm actually okay with all the ways Juneteenth has been exploited over the past few years. I'm happy when I see a Juneteenth sale or ads in the paper, not because I don't understand the way things are commercialized, but because I understand the power of naming a thing. If a Juneteenth sale creates curiosity in a person to find out what this holiday is all about, and as a result, they are educated about the history of this country and all the ways freedom's work must continue, then I take that as a win. I suppose that's a lesson I've carried my whole life. Sometimes before you can teach people, you've got to wake them up. You've got to show up in a way they can't ignore. Walk long enough and talk loud enough that the world must stop and listen. And when they finally do, embrace your mission, give them space to grow into the journey, even if their growth doesn't ideally look the way you'd like it to. This is why it's important to make yourself a committee of one. It really does only take one determined person to make a change. When you become such a person, you soon find people who deep down want the same things you want. People who might have been taught to hate might, by your example, learn the power of love. But you might have to be the one, like me, who takes the first step. Dr. Opal Lee, wow. Thank you so much to Oprah Daily for sharing that story and that article and that history. So powerful, so important. Can't think of a better way to wrap up this conversation than go to our links, go listen yourself, take this opportunity to dig in and understand and be part of this celebration. Be the one in your community, in your neighborhood. It says we're celebrating from June 19th to July 4th as a collective, but get to know the history. History matters. It helps us to learn. It helps us to realize the truth. It keeps us humble. It helps us to realize, boy, we did some really awful things in our history. And also, it gives me understanding now for how things are, the systems that are still based in those old narratives and stories, the systems that are still hurting those people that were enslaved, that are still hurting and impacting to today, because the ability, the just blatant racism that still exists, the blatant inaccurate belief systems and harmful and horrible and cruel belief systems that still exist, and the mere fact that just math-wise, the freedom was behind the white American freedom. And so the impact for generational wealth and history, there's just so many pieces and parts of it. This is why it's so important. This fear-based mongering and these lies and deceptions that are told out there are so harmful. Get to know the truth. This is your opportunity this week. I've shared with you a remarkable article about this woman, Dr. Opal Lee, and her desire to be committed to making this a national holiday. But get to know the history, the full history of how we got here, and start understanding why it is we're here today and what you can do healthier, better, differently, one person at a time, to be the change, to speak up, to be part of, to continue to learn, to continue to unlearn. It's okay to be like, you know what? I know differently now. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do healthier. I'm going to be a part of impactful, meaningful, truth-based change. So thank you so much for listening to this conversation. Go to the show notes. That's really where the magic is. Reread what I shared with you, read those other links, share them with people, and go participate. Sign up for that walk, the Dr. Opal Lee's walks that are happening across the country. Walk that 2.5 miles, whether you can do it in person in one of those cities or virtually. Thank you so much for being with us, with me here on Together We Feel. Also taking the opportunity, I'll have links to our episodes from our incredible Black women who have spoken so much wisdom and truth and resource-filled stories with us. Go check those out, listen to those, share those, and take good care of yourselves. We'll be back next week with a Come As You Are panel here. But for today, happy Juneteenth. Get to know it, understand it, honor it, share it with your neighbors, bring it up in conversations, and take this opportunity to learn and grow. I like and embrace the opportunity to have conversations that disrupt so many harmful narratives that are out there. And I couldn't miss this opportunity to do that. I don't get it right all the time. And I'm happy to hear from my Black friends when I don't. And then I can apologize and I can do better and I can learn and I can grow. But doing nothing is a choice. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I don't have a choice because of this, that. You always have a choice. Being complicit is a choice. So be mindful of your choices. Make the choice to learn something this week that's true about Juneteenth and the importance of it. Take good care. We'll see you next week here on Together We Feel.